players should you add before week 11 of the fantasy football season? What's going on, football fans and fantasy freaks? It's Mitch here, back with another waiver wire must-adds video. This time for week 11. My 10 favorite ads to prepare you, not only for week 11, for the rest of this playoff push. If that sounds good, spike the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to OwnersBox Fantasy for weekly waiver wire advice. This week on OwnersBox, we're running an exclusive sweet deal. To new users only, we're giving away 500 free player pick entries. Only to new users who sign up this week. Player picks is a more or less props game. It's very easy to play, and it's easy to win. Use the code PP100, and you'll get a free $100 player picks entry when you deposit $10 or more. Link in the description and in the pinned comment. That is PP100, guys. Check it out. Let's get started with the must-add players, 10 must-add players before week 11. And let's kick it off with Ricky Pearsall. We've been talking about Ricky Pearsall for I don't know how many weeks in a row. I hope he's already on your team. And if he's not on your team, you may regret it because this kid looked really good this week. And like I said, he's a receiver that is just going to continue to get better. He's a first-round pick. He's a crafty route runner. And he barely participated in the offseason program. He barely played this season so far. He's barely had any rapport or chemistry or time with Brock Purdy. But when it mattered most, and the Niners needed to come through with a field goal drive to win the game in the fourth quarter, who did Brock Purdy throw to? He threw to Ricky Pearsall multiple times on that drive. And who scored the first touchdown of that Bucs game? Ricky Pearsall with yards after catch and a slick route to get open. Pearsall is going to play an important role with Brandon Ayuk out for the season for the 49ers. They drafted this kid for a reason. It was actually with intent. If Brandon Ayuk was traded, he would take the spot of Brandon Ayuk. We've seen Deebo Samuel, Juwan Jennings, those guys are going to be the number 1 and number 2. Ricky Pearsall has slotted in as that number 3 receiver, and there's plenty to go around in this offense, especially if he continues to run routes and separate against man coverage the way that he is. 4 receptions, 73 yards, 1 touchdown on 6 targets. We've seen him do damage in previous games as well, as a runner, as a route runner, as a receiver. Pearsall is going to be a baller. I think for the rest of the year, I think he is flex capable. I wouldn't trust him every week, but I think there are certainly weeks for the rest of the year, and especially if he continues to build on this performance, I mean, who knows? He could be like the number 1 receiver on this team, just given the trajectory of Deebo Samuel as a route runner, given Juwan Jennings' entire career. Like, he could end up being the number 1 receiver by like the playoffs of your fantasy season. He's a first-round pick. He's got sweet athleticism. Like, the kid is good. So watch out for him for the rest of the year. Ricky Pearsall is a must-add. There's not really anyone out there right now in most leagues that's a bigger add than Ricky Pearsall, unless someone was dropped out of nowhere, okay? The quarterback position is an important position to hone in on, and this is especially hitting close to home for me because there's a league or two where I'm in and my team's good. Like, I'll be in the playoffs, but my quarterback's a little weak. So I've got to kind of figure out some solutions to get me to the playoffs, and when I'm in the playoffs, to get me some dubs. So first of all, let's talk about Justin Herbert, who I think right now is playing top 5 quarterback ball in the NFL. And Justin Herbert actually has a pretty sweet schedule, as he's kind of had for a majority of the season, but especially coming up, Herbert's going to continue to benefit from playing pretty bad teams and pretty bad defenses. This past week, he actually had a rushing touchdown, which was pretty interesting. They actually designed a rushing play for Herbert himself. It wasn't a scramble. It wasn't a quarterback sneak. It was like a pulling lineman, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen type vibe for Justin Herbert. That could continue to pop up in some of these games. He was also really efficient, 14 for 18. He only had 164 yards. It was against the Titans, a good defense, but they didn't really need to push the ball down the field. there's going to be future weeks here where he's going to have to score. He's going to have to play with the competition on the other side. And he's playing fantastic ball. So honestly, like, he's the type of quarterback that I would trust against pretty much 90% of the league, because he's just a really good player. He's just a really good quarterback. So I've talked about his schedule in the past. I would pick him up right now. If you need somebody that can just be reliable at quarterback, I think Herbert is certainly your guy. There's other solutions at the quarterback position. You could go high-end dart throw with Drake May. We've talked about Drake May, the rookie of the Patriots, who I think is a lot better than most people give him credit for, because they don't watch the Patriots anymore. This isn't when Tom Brady played, right? No more interest in the Patriots. So Drake May doesn't really get seen by a majority of folks watching football right now. And Drake May is really good at football. I know that his stat line wasn't like amazing, but he had 25 passing attempts, which shows once again that the Patriots will throw the ball with Drake May. We saw him throw the ball a ton against Tennessee. He had 90 rushing yards against Tennessee. We saw him throw the ball and put up points against Jacksonville. We saw him have 3 touchdowns against a very good Texans defense who made Jared Goff throw 5 interceptions, right? Drake May, 184 passing yards, 1 touchdown through the air. Pretty quiet day, 4 rushes, 24 yards. The reason for that is the Chicago offense did next to nothing, pretty much nothing. Like, they scored 3 points. So the Patriots were very conservative offensively, but there's going to be future weeks like this upcoming week against the Rams. They play Miami the week after that in Miami. There's going to be weeks where they play better offenses that are going to expose this Patriots defense for what they are, which is mid to bad. And it's going to make Drake May push the ball. And against the Rams, they've given up a ton of explosive passes. I'd expect May to actually have a pretty sneaky good game. And then against the Miami Dolphins, that could be a game where New England is having to climb from behind and make some plays through the air. And I could see Drake having another good game there. But it kind of lines up for Drake where he plays Arizona as well. Like, some teams where he can definitely get after it and throw the ball and put up some fantasy points. So he's a very interesting asset considering his rushing upside and the team he plays for, considering they're going to be losing a lot of these games and coming from behind. Gino Smith is another one of those guys that's going to have a ton of volume. When you're talking about passing attempts, completions, when you're talking about throwing the ball in general, Gino is going to have more volume than almost any quarterback in the league. He's going to be right there with guys like Joe Burrow, and that's why he is valuable for fantasy. 4th in passing yards this season. He actually has 4 different 300-yard games on the season. He did just recently before the bye week, which he's on right now, and then he'll be facing the 49ers, which wouldn't be my favorite start for him, but right after he plays Arizona twice and the Jets. The Niners game, he actually had over 300 yards, but it was kind of garbage time, so that's a little bit risky in my opinion, but you could lean into that if you need the option of Gino Smith. But what you like about Gino is he's just going to throw it a lot. Like, they're just going to throw it a lot, and 363 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Rams speaks to that last week. So when he's on and he's got DK and he's got JSN and he's got his receivers, Tyler Lockett, like, they're going to throw, they're going to be efficient with it, and they're going to throw the ball down the field, and that's good for fantasy. So Gino Smith, especially with where their defense is at right now, I would consider picking him up. So 3 different options at quarterback to potentially fix your quarterback issue, play the matchups, lean into certain, exposure to these players. Herbert, if you need like a solid starter week to week. May, if you're looking for a guy that gives you like a solid rushing floor, but also potentially passing upside. And Gino, if you're looking for an explosive passer for your fantasy team and you're kind of leaning into, okay, it's Seahawks versus Cardinals. This could be a shootout that might be coming up. So definitely take a look at the matchups for those quarterbacks. Jaylen Warren is going to be my next pickup. Warren, I talked about, I think last week. He's a great pickup this week. Warren, 14 carries, 66 yards against the Commanders. It's important to know that Jaylen Warren's 14 carries were not because the Steelers were playing from ahead. It wasn't because the Steelers prefer Warren over Najee. Actually, it's because they ran the ball 35 times with running backs. They ran the ball 14 times with Jaylen Warren and 21 times with Najee Harris in a script where they weren't really playing from ahead. They were just competitive in the game against the Commanders. Like, the game was back and forth. It was just a good game. They ran the ball 35 times. So this is a run-heavy offense. Warren and Najee are going to be heavily involved. Even Cordero Patterson got some carries, and he also caught 2 balls for 29 yards. Warren is very talented. He outproduced Najee in this game. He played better than Najee in this game, which is going to also lead to more opportunities down the road because I think Arthur Smith's going to see that this kid's very efficient which is going to lead to more carries, as we've been seeing. The next player that I would definitely look at is Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards came back this past week, was activated off IR for the Chargers, and he provided the complement for J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins still was the primary ball carrier, but we talked about why Dobbins could be a sell in our trade market because he's been very, very good for fantasy. He's been touchdown reliant. And also, Gus Edwards is coming back. The matchups are getting tough, all that sort of stuff. But JK is wearing down, 3.3 yards per carry. Gus Edwards had 5.5 yards per carry on 10 carries near the end of the game. Edwards is a guy that I could see like being that 1B to J.K. Dobbins 1A for the rest of the season. And if Dobbins does get hurt, he would actually become like an RB2 type of player in this Charger offense, which is a pretty solid offense as discussed with Herbert, as Herbert continues to play better and better and better under Greg Roman. Our next pickup at running back, so this is kind of like tiers, right? Warren to me is like a flexible player every week. Edwards, you're probably only playing him if you're in a deeper league or if you need like a bye week fill and your team is full of bye weeks, but he's also got some injury contingency. Audric Estime is a player that I would say is more of a handcuff for Javonte Williams. He had 5 carries, but then he also had 14 carries against the Chiefs. And that's interesting to note because 14 carries against the Chiefs, right? It wasn't 14 carries against the Raiders. It wasn't 14 carries against the Panthers. This was 14 carries against the Chiefs, which is a huge game for the Broncos. And it was on the road, and it's a rookie running back being asked to carry the ball 14 times in a hostile environment in a tight football game that they were actually leading. So Estime is a tough, physical, big, powerful ball carrier. He's a big running back. He's like 6'2", 6'3". He is going to be one of those guys that leans on you, that's tough to tackle in cold weather. He's going to become much more relevant down the stretch. You think about Estime and Williams and that size that the Broncos are going to be bringing to the backfield. They're going to want to lean on this running game as they search for a playoff spot in the AFC. At number 8, I have the Houston Texans defense. I'm actually going to include a defense here because I think at this point in the season, there's not a lot of players that are actually worth picking up that are going to plug into your lineup. The defense is one of those, right? You need to start a defense every week, and the Texans defense might just get you into your playoffs. They play the Dallas Cowboys on Monday Night Football. Although it's on the road, it's still in the state of Texas. There'll be plenty of Texans fans there, and it's against terrible Dallas offense with no offensive line against probably Will Anderson will be back, Danielle Hunter, that pass rush of the Texans who just forced 5 picks to Jared Goff. That's going to be a big outing there. They play Tennessee at home the week after that with Will Levis's turnover-worthy quarterback play. Then you've got Jacksonville the week after that. Who knows? That could be Trevor Lawrence. That could be Mac Jones. So those 3 games, Dallas, Tennessee, Jacksonville, that could really give you like 15 points a week. Like, honestly, they might do that for you, considering how good their pass rush is, how many sacks they get, the turnovers they're causing, and their defense is only getting healthier. So, yeah, Texans defense could dominate on your way to the playoffs. At number 9, I got Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore is next up. I would say a sneaky wide receiver PPR addition just because of the amount of volume he's seen. He's currently on a bye week, so people have probably forgotten about him. They've dropped him. But before the bye week, he saw 6 targets, 12 targets, and 9 targets, 12 and 9, 21 targets in the 2 games with Jameis Winston. He now has a nice little spot start against the Saints. I think that you could start him against the Saints, and I think there will be some good reception total for Elijah Moore there. I could see him having 7 catches for 85 yards, maybe a touchdown in that game. I think he will have a good game. He's been very active as the slot receiver and underneath target for this Browns offense and is seeing more exposure with Jameis. Now, down the stretch, the Browns play a really tough defensive schedule. They play Pittsburgh twice, Denver, Kansas City. It's not going to be a guy that you want to start a ton, but if he continues to see this type of volume, it's just tough to ignore. You have to pick him up, I think, if you need a wide receiver or a bye week fill, especially when it comes to like that week 14 range. Those are killers. Jonnu Smith is going to be my final must add of week number 11, guys. Jonnu Smith, tight end's real tough right now. A lot of the tight ends that are relevant have been taken. Zach Ertz is another I thought of, but I already discussed Zach Ertz in previous weeks. He's a guy you can fall back on if you can't get Jonnu, but Jonnu has had very consistent role in this Miami offense. 8 targets, 7 targets, 6 targets, 6 targets, 4 targets. That's 10 total targets since Tua's returned. Vegas, New England, Green Bay, or I should say not not 10. That's 16. 6-6-4. I forgot that Tua actually played against the Cardinals as well. So Las Vegas, New England, Green Bay, those are good matchups for Jonnu Smith. He's become the third target in this offense from a receiver perspective. It's Tyreek Hill, it's Jaylen Waddle, it's Jonnu Smith, and Waddle's actually seen less targets than Jonnu, which is interesting. And Jonnu is a manufactured guy. Like, he's a great athlete. He's good at breaking tackles. He's quick. He's fast. He's tough to bring down. Like, this is a guy that's great in the screen game. So he also gets some pretty easy looks. He should have scored a touchdown against the Rams. That might have made him actually more of a alluring pickup, but because he didn't, and you know that he was very close, he got down to the 1 yard line, that's also worth incentive to maybe get a sneaky pickup in Jonnu Smith to help you at the tight end position if you need one for the rest of the season. Guys, those are my 10 pickups for week 11. Don't forget to sign up to OwnersBox this week if you haven't already, guys. The promo code is PP100. That is a free $100 player picks entry when you deposit $10 or more. It's Mitch. Thanks for watching. Deuces.